I try not to pretend that one person wrote the Torah. We have a tradition in Judaism that Moses was given the entire Torah on Mount Sinai. Honestly, for me, that's never quite felt totally right. I found meaning personally out of a variety of different academic ways that we have received the text that we call Torah now and the tradition that comes from it. But I think one of the major questions is, if we accept this is true, that Torah was written by a lot of different authors, edited together, how do we find spiritual meaning out of that? How do we make that meaningful in a way that keeps us rooted in the tradition and helps us understand what matters most? I think for me, one of the most important values is that truth, integrity matters. It's one of the ways that we most connect with God is when we're true with ourselves and we're true with God and we're honest and we have integrity. And so part of this is about understanding, well, I think there's real truth to some of the academic understandings of how we got Torah and the archaeology that comes to tell us one thing or another. So the question is, how do we make spiritual meaning, especially at times where we're talking about Shavuot, where we're celebrating the giving of Torah? How do we hold that narrative of receiving Torah while recognizing sort of the academic truths that exist? How do we find meaning out of that? I think one of the ways that we do that is we recognize that Torah expresses itself as stories of encounter. Throughout Torah, we read stories of encounters with God. Those stories are then collected into this incredible compendium of stories of true, deep, meaningful encounters with the divine. And we get all sorts of different stories. We have these all-powerful moments. We have Jacob's dream with the ladder, right? God was here and I didn't even know it. We have the burning bush, this inexplicable moment. We have the Sinai story with fire and thunder and lightning and this synesthesia sense of overwhelm that happens. And then we get later on in later parts of Tanakh that tell us God was not in the fire or in the thunder, but in the silence, in the small, still voice. If we hold all of those encounters together, we don't get a story of a single document passed down in a single moment. We get a story, a collection of stories of encounter held together by the truth of those moments. The rabbis hold a lot of views here. In one place in Masechet Sanhedrin, it says that if you claim that Torah wasn't given by heaven or wasn't from heaven, that you despise the word of God. I don't think that's what I'm saying here. I don't think that's what's happening here, but it shows the seriousness in which the rabbis considered the deep divine nature of Torah. And I think, to me, Torah is profoundly divine by its encounter with human beings and God together, that combination of things. In another place, in Breshit Rabbah, in the Midrash, the rabbis tell us that the Torah is a blueprint for the universe. Well, how can we have an understanding that God gave this document in full to Moses and also the blueprint of the universe in a cosmic scale? I think that breaks the sense of literalness that we expect to believe. And so I think for me, the understanding is to recognize that Torah is this cosmic principle, a cosmic unit of thing that exists as we've received it through time. It doesn't exist purely as a document given at Sinai or purely as this blueprint for the universe. It's a little bit of both. It holds both of those things by being a thing that we have transmitted through time, documenting the encounters with God. And I think part of the rabbis knew this already. The first Mishnah of Masechet Avot is that Moses received Torah and passed it down throughout the generations. Part of what that teaches me is that we are also like Moses in that we receive tradition from those who came before us and we pass it down. To me, that honors the possibility, the understanding that it was received by the tradition in the form that we have it, and how it got to us matters less than the fact that we have it. I don't think that the chain of transmission or how we got it breaks anything important. In fact, I actually think it's a feature and not a bug. Human mediation isn't a flaw, it is exactly what we too are meant to do. When we accept the idea, or if you hold the idea, that Torah was transmitted to us by human beings, it doesn't negate any of the value that it has, because it holds the encounter with the divine, many encounters. We look at many parts of the tradition and they inform our understanding of what happened before. And so when we look at the various traditions that have emerged, even just within the rabbinic tradition, like the Kabbalistic approach or the Hasidic approach or academic or archaeological approaches or feminist approaches, all of them add a layer of truth to our understanding. And so the idea that God gave us Torah through human encounters that were then edited together doesn't just become an essential recognition of a truth of how something happened. It becomes a recognition that we too are co-creators with God of Torah itself. And to me, that is profound. It means that my encounters with the divine can mirror the ones documented here in the text. It teaches us that God is not just in the encounter, but in the process. The editor, holding this precious document, made choices that help us understand ourselves better. And we see this throughout the Torah text itself. There are 2 creation stories, 2 tellings of the 10 Commandments. It's not an accident. They're invitations. They're opportunities to see text in new ways, to recognize that no one person owns the encounter with the divine, but that both encounters, both tellings of the story are just as essential as something else. That both tellings of the story are essential for us to understand, that those contradictions are not contradictions, they're opportunities, invitations. It's the recognition of the plurality of understanding Torah. The reason why we've never stopped learning Torah is because our unique way of engaging with it, plus the way that it has come to us, plus the centuries, millennia of people wrestling with it, gives it its meaning. To me, that is so special. And I think more than anything else, it recognizes a spiritual maturity that is really quite essential. Spiritual maturity doesn't just accept simplicity. Torah is not limited in that way. It recognizes complexity. It holds complexity. And complexity is holy. I won't deny that there is a part of me that wishes I believed that Torah was literally given by God on Mount Sinai. To hold something so unshakable is precious. And there are other parts of my life that might feel that way. And I think that here we can hold the idea that God was in the room, that God was a part of that process, and that holding that truth doesn't negate our reverence for the text, but actually invites us deeper into it. Truth is sacred, and I think avoiding it isn't reverence, it's avoidance. Pretending to believe something that you don't is not holding truth and doesn't bring you closer to God. Holding truth and wrestling with it is a recipe for a healthy, engaging relationship with the divine, and not avoiding or pretending something that isn't true. God desires us to hold truth. And I don't want to say that we reject the tradition or the ancestors, or that if you believe that God gave Torah literally at Sinai, that you should stop believing it. I don't mean that. People should believe what they want. Hold the truths that feel right to you. But I think that recognizing this revealed nature of Torah through the academic hypotheses that exist, to me, helps me understand God and Torah more honestly, and more deeply, and means that I don't have to hold two parts of myself that don't agree with each other, but I can find synthesis in that. That the spirituality of recognizing the gift that Torah gave us, that God gave us through God's encounters with human beings, means that I too can participate in that story. I don't think we were ever meant to worship simplicity or simple truths. We're meant to live in relationship, in covenant, in honesty, and in truth with each other, with God, with the text. The rabbis say that the Shekhinah, God's presence, dwells between two people who study Torah. However which way that you believe that Torah came to us, God's presence is still with you when you engage with it. And I don't think we need to be afraid of it. We can lean into it. This is an evolving truth for me. And it's something I've never quite articulated before. But I think it feels honest and spacious and faithful. It brings me a sense of emunah, of mutual faithfulness with the divine. And so I don't pretend that one person wrote the Torah, but I know that God was a part of the process.